all our news items are in videos, on the amazing 38-minute speech by Donald Trump. And I have to say, this is the most impressive speech I've heard by any president in modern history. And he is President Trump. I mean, I can tell you that right now. He's our nascent president. He is God's trump card. And the plans that he has to put in place with all the team he's going to assemble around him. But by the way, it's not just Trump. He's going to assemble a team of financial, geopolitical, and other experts with much experience and ability, but a lot of new people, because a lot of the older people, as he said in the speech, are not getting the job done. They're too corrupt. They've been tied into the system. They can't move because they've got super PACs and contributions, and they're corrupt, just like corrupt or, crooked Hillary or crooked Ted Cruz. And now I couldn't believe when I actually saw the report that Carly Fiorina is their so-called the running mate. This man has no chance whatsoever and Carly Fiorina being the vice president, of winning. And yet these delusional people are supported by the so-called establishment. And by the way, you have to understand this. When Roger Stone makes a statement that 90% of people that give a $1,000 contribution or more to the Democratic, we call, or Republicans, 90% of those that give $1,000 to Republicans also give $1,000 to the, quote, establishment Democrats. So there really is no difference. The system is interchangeable. So I want people to understand. Tim, are you there? No, I can't hear Tim's yet. So we're going to keep chasing down Tim. Hopefully everything is fine. The important thing to understand is that we're dealing with a situation where the powers that be are going crazy over the idea that Donald Trump is now going to be the candidate, and that when he starts to savage, as he did in the speech last night, the Obama and Hillary disasters of the last 8 years, and the plan to have a third term in the sense of Obama further destroying the economy, and by the way, continuing the disastrous terms of George Bush Jr. and previously Bill Clinton, who signed NAFTA. And remember now, Ted Cruz's wife was involved in actually masterminding NAFTA and the North American Free Trade Agreement that savaged the American industry and has now, in some states, cut 40 to 60% of industrial production down. What we have to understand is the same things. If you want to be able to fund, reasonable priced education for young people and have jobs for them, if you want to have health care for everyone without giant copays that they can't afford, if you want to have a system that starts to build up our military so we're respected by our enemies and we're relied upon by our allies, as Trump says also, our allies need to pay their fair portion of the cost of NATO. We need to remodernize it to deal with terrorism, which we haven't, so it needs to be refurbished. So every part of his speech was just amazing, and he obviously had some considerable help to write this speech. But he's an intelligent man, and he's pragmatic, and he's going to get things done. As he said, our first motion is not to go to war, it's to go to negotiate and try to work out a deal. But he said, if you lay all the cards on the table and do your best, there are times when you have to walk from the table. And we have to know that there are common grounds with even countries like Russia and China, and we can negotiate with China to control their mad dog state beside them. With basically, Kim Jong-un can't literally pass gas sideways unless he checks with Beijing and the Chinese Communist government. So the fact that this mad dog is sending missiles and could potentially hit U.S. cities is in a sense, it's almost like having a bad neighbor that has a wild dog that's on a chain, and the fence is low enough that the dog could jump over and bite your kid. Well, China knows better. And if we use Trump's negotiating strategies, China can get control of their mad dog Kim Jong-un and the crazy North Koreans that think it's a fine idea to try to nuke America. And remember, these nations like Iran and like China don't necessarily have to shoot from their own territory. They can haul a barge out or have a fishing boat out in the North Pacific Ocean, hundreds of miles from the coast, and fire a missile and cause an EMP effect or attack a city. And they don't have to attack everything. Our missile defense system is woefully weak, and it hasn't been modernized during the years of Obama, especially, but during George Bush. And as the economy continues to devolve, we have less money to do the things like building infrastructure and advancing things and stopping industrial espionage by China and other nations. Everything that has been done has been to deconstruct the country. As we've said this before, Obama has been remarkably successful at destroying the nature and the viability of America because it's part of their agenda. He's not a failure. he's a massive success. So that's important. We might try to get our other guest as well at the bottom of the hour. And if you have callers, by the way, out there, 800-313-9443. At the bottom of the hour, we usually have Chris Harris, our nuclear expert. We might get him on early if that's possible, Dan. I want to go over some of the other news items that are really burning here. Believe it or not, Boehner, which is this idiot, always crying, of course, as the previous Speaker of the House, that Biden could still enter the presidential race. Why have all this noise? Let's just get down to Hillary and Trump, and let Trump destroy her, and let she sings off into the wilderness and is gone, and Trump starts to assemble and rebuild America. Because if America doesn't have President Trump, it will have not only a deep recession, it will go into decay, and eventually the nation will break up. That's a fact. Tim, are you there?
I am there, and I'm just literally walked in the door from a Trump rally in Evansville, Indiana. I got to see the Trump phenomena up close, and I want to tell you, it is amazing.
Yeah, I bet it was. By the way, when we start the hours, we start at the top of the hour. We actually have our bumper right at the top. We don't have a 5-minute break like Genesis. So tell me about the Trump rally. What did they...
Well, there was a lot of traffic. I saw people standing in line for 15 blocks.
Wow.
He had Bobby Knight with him, which in Indiana is a very good move. Unlike Cruz, who referred to a basketball hoop as a basketball ring. What an idiot. The crowd was absolutely wild for Trump. I saw no demonstrations, no problems of any kind.
Well, when I heard the O'Reilly try to spin it the other day, that in Anaheim, where a city councilwoman put up a statement that she didn't want to have any, quote, controversial issues being brought forward, which is ridiculous. The anti-Trump rally started things off, and then O'Reilly tried to spin it that maybe the Trump supporters started to get violent and so on. That's just not the case.
No. There was no trouble at all.
This is all Black Lives Matter supported by Soros. It's all people like Bernie Sanders supporters that basically are extreme left that find it obscene to hear an alternative viewpoint. I think let the people decide. Let them hear the facts. I mean, Bernie listens. In fact, Trump mentioned this, that Bernie should run independent. And the reason why he should run independent is because Hillary's stealing the nomination. But Bernie doesn't have a clue as to how to solve the problem or actually do anything. He identifies...
Communism and socialism does not work.
Well, he has... Listen, when asked tough questions, even by Hillary, which is not... about how he's actually going to do things, he hasn't got the faintest clue, but neither does Hillary. And even if she did, she's so corrupt she won't do the solution because she's evil. And she's totally corrupt. The only one who hasn't taken the super PAC money, which drives these demonic minions crazy, is the fact that Trump is a real blue-collar billionaire. That's what I call him, a blue-collar billionaire. And people need to know that.
Yeah,
by the way,
I'll tell you, if you listen to his speech, he sounds like a real human being.
He is.
He's not afraid to use a slightly off-color word, and nothing really obscene.
No.
But he talks like human beings talk, not like some polished politician that is shoveling manure as fast as he can. Former House Speaker Brummer calls Ted Cruz Lucifer. This is just breaking news on BBC.
Well.
But actually, Trump is real.
I got a new term for Ted. We're going to call him loser fur. How's that?
Yeah, well, and he when you put two losers together, you don't get a winner. And he picked what's her face,
Carly Fiorina. By the way, she's trashed a number of corporations. I mean, if she had talent running a corporation, you do not want her running America, which is a large corporation.
Yeah, well. Trump repeatedly hit right on the button, and of course, to me, it's music to my ears. All these jobs, he said, listen, Carrier, which is a big air conditioning firm in Indianapolis, and they're moving to Mexico. And by the way, a cousin of mine was an engineer for many years, a top engineer with him. He's retired now, but Trump said, look, when you move your production out of this country to Mexico or China, there should be a penalty. there should be a penalty. You don't just go down there and hire people for a few pennies an hour or maybe $1 or $2 an hour to compete with our workers. No. That's what tariffs
Yeah, but that's
are.
tariffs. But I'm going to expand on that. I'm writing, actually, I talked to Roger Stone independently, and I'm writing a series of position papers expanding on what Trump has on trade, on healthcare. For example, on trade, here's a few things that I want to throw out there right now for the public to understand. Number one, on trade, you don't just penalize them with trade tariffs. You expand the international tax law, which, by the way, you can't do to start getting into these nations without deals, not with trade organizations like the TTIP and TTP, which puts it to an international business court. No, you make a deal between the U.S. and China, the U.S. and Malaysia, the U.S. and Japan separately, and then in those deals, you make sure that the SWIFT, the financial systems, can get into them hiding money and taxes, these transnational corporations, away from the purview of the American tax system, so that wherever they are, whether it's Apple Corporation or anybody, they're not going to get away with it anymore. Number two, what you need to do is you got to make sure that that they have to be bilateral. Right now, for example, China has tremendous tariffs and blocks for American goods to be sold in China. They steal $200 billion plus of industrial espionage every year to China. And then, for example, I saw one report on 60 Minutes last fall that a company that makes these windmill systems for converting and making electricity, they brought their technology to China. The Chinese basically stole it. And they had the guy right there, and they said they did everything they could. They had this giant contract, and all of a sudden, boom, the Chinese literally stole it. And they tried the same way as Bombardier out of Quebec, Canada, the best high-speed rail systems in the world, and the Chinese literally stole it. They did it. They grabbed the technology, did some minor tweaking to make it go 50 kilometers an hour faster, and all of a sudden they said it was theirs, and they tried to patent it. The fact is that this kind of behavior isn't acceptable. And with somebody like Trump in there, you're not going to be able to do that. And secondly, it can be win-win. It doesn't have to be win-lose. It can be win-win.
Well, that's the art of the deal.
Yeah, the art of the deal is, for example, why make the Chinese choke their cities like Beijing? And I have talked to my friend, Dr. Ron Klatz, and you can go to Beijing and you can get 2 inches of rubber dust in your car in the afternoon. It's ridiculous. People walk around with masks and respirators on all over the city. It's insane. And when the pollution level gets too high, they had to stop it for the Beijing Olympics a few years ago. My solution is this. Number one, we have a trans-Alaskan pipeline with gas and oil to China and these special big ships we design. We tell them, you cannot use dirty coal without scrubbers. You're going to buy the stuff from us. We're going to give you a good deal. We're going to have a long-term deal. We're going to have conditions in that deal, and don't mess with us. We want you to not pollute your cities, and we want you to sell our stuff to us, but vice versa. We're going to make things in our country, and don't put barriers up. And the second thing is we've got to take away these regulations that hog-tie, but I'm not talking about getting rid of things that prevent environmental damage. For example, when Bernie Sanders raises a question about fracking, and again, you can frack with microwaves and other technology, but you don't want to put toxic chemicals down there to destroy the aquifer, but you also have to re-inject water into the aquifer. I talked to Paul Power from the Primary Water Institute, and I'm going to get on the show the scientists from the Geology Department of Northwestern University in primary water. I know the technology exists. For example, when I talked to Paul a month ago, he was drilling in Northern California at 6,000 feet, and he got 1,000 gallons per minute water out by only drilling 120 feet deep. 120 feet at 6,000 feet up in the mountains there. Because he knew it was an old fault line. He knew there was a giant, literally, batholith of water there. He knew from his own experience, which he's training other geologists how to do this kind of what's called primary water drilling. The fact is we need to re-inject the aquifers. We can't dry it out and turn the American Midwest into a desert. We can't go and inject toxic chemicals. And they can't also do stupid things near Superfund sites like this WIP reactor in New Mexico and then send out to the oil companies radioactive oil and gas and other petrochemical products.
Well, Dr. Deagle, I think a lot of this that you're speaking of, it's beyond greed. It's population reduction programs. It's literally Satan.
It's the devil. Let's just summarize. It's like Flip Wilson is when you're trying to figure it all out and you want to use logic, forget it. It's just the devil.
Yeah, the devil makes
It's just the devil, People say, it doesn't make sense. It makes sense to the devil. It doesn't make sense to you. It makes sense to the devil.
Yeah, well, you're dealing with an entity that has been around for eons that rejected Christ.
Well, I spoke yesterday for an hour. I spoke yesterday for an hour. They wanted me longer, but it came butt up against my show yesterday morning, so I did 4 hours of broadcasting yesterday on the John B. Wells show, and they have you on video too, which is funny, because I'm there with one of my little orbital cams, not my fancy camera on, and I'm leaning forward when I have let's say I have what I call lemur eyes. My eyes are larger than normal, so you can imagine me with my glasses on, and I'm there showing expressions because they're a very expressive face, and and I'm doing what I call flow of consciousness, talk about all these issues because we didn't have breaks. There was not even a 1 second break because there's no commercials. And he usually has guests on for at least an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and I don't know. They must have bladder control, but I was cool. I was good. We talked about all these issues. And the fact is, there's no shortage of solutions. And I challenge people out there to do this. I will provide, and this is a challenge to everybody listening, either live or after, audio on demand and podcast, a solution for every problem on Earth instantaneously, or a framework to find an answer. And you see the same approach in Trump. If he doesn't know, he goes and taps into all his advisors, and he comes back a few days or weeks later, or when it's appropriate. For example, when he's fighting with these other guys for the nomination, he's not going to come up with his position paper. That's why yesterday he finally came up with his position paper and his speech, which I think is the most presidential speech in history that I've ever heard from an intelligent man who's a real American patriot saying how he's going to make America great. But by the way, without a great America, the world is going to go to hell in a handcart.
Bobby Knight said he will be one of the 4 great presidents in the United States history.
He will be, to me, up there with George Washington. He'll be up there with Thomas Jefferson. He'll be up there with, the top 4 presidents in history, because we're refounding America on principles that were laid there by the first founders. And America is unique. De Tocqueville said several hundred years ago, and he said this, he was coming from France as a geopolitical analyst, and he said, and you probably know this because you're a teacher, that America is great, not because it has all the resources, but because America is good. And they're good because they respect the rule of law, they respect that there's a Christian nation based on Judeo-Christian principles, it respects the right of people to create a profit. If you want to have a system, for example, to have education, and I'm putting this together on an education paper, or healthcare, and I've said to Roger Stone, I believe in all the 7 principles that Trump has, and I'm writing an article on it that'll be finished this weekend. You need to do the following in addition to that. You need to do, number 1, get rid of malpractice and have mediation. You need to get rid of state licensing authorities. You need to get rid of big pharma controlling all healthcare. You need to get rid of the revilement of innovation. Doctors are losing their license even for just giving more than a month of even drug treatment for Lyme disease. I have panic calls every week from people, both people and doctors, who've got Lyme problems or their pets. And they're in a panic because their doctor just lost their license in whatever state. These idiots, and there's no nice word for it, these stupid and evil doctors that are willing to take their colleagues' licenses because they're trying to help patients that are in extremis is obscene. And so if we took away the authority, and most of them, these state licensing authorities are just trying to control the marketplace for them and their buddies. So that's like one group of spine surgeons trying to knock off another group or whatever. It's evil. And my plan added on top of Trump's plan, and I'm sending it to Roger Stone to get to Donald Trump, will solve it, cut the cost dramatically, and allow everybody to get health care at a reasonable cost, and no one needs to worry about going bankrupt. One of these events that are going on right now, Trump is there. I talked about this last week on the video, live stream video, which, by the way, had an amazing amount of hits, with Roger Stone. And by the way, the interview that we did with Hardy Schlanger yesterday with Roger Stone was like going through the ceiling. People wanted to know what Roger Stone's thinking in terms of his contact and his advice with Donald Trump. But he's written a number of books on LBJ, on the Clintons, and the Bush crime family, and Jeb Bush. That's why right after Jeb Bush read the book, he dropped out of the race because he knew he was going to get nailed. And the fact is, at 9/11, when George Bush was holding a book upside down reading about a pet goat at a school in Florida, the demolition of the World Trade Center was occurring because it was a war game with false icons put on the screen by NORAD and U.S. Space Command. It's not by a tall Saudi Arabian engineer by the name of Tim Osman, a.k.a. Osama bin Laden, the head of the Mujahideen under the CIA. people need to start grasping. I've been saying this for years. My message previously at Genesis was stifled by the big AJ. People need to know that. They need to know I'm unrestrained now, and I'm going to say wherever the heck I please to get the truth out. And I have more information to whistleblow on more topics than any other person that's ever had a breath or a pulse. You know that too, don't you, Tim? Okay? People say, how could you be in all these places? I said, God had my day timer. Okay? So you need to understand firsthand, which isn't open to anybody's damned opinion. Firsthand, I have experience that's not open to anybody saying, well, I don't want to believe that. It's just a fact. These things are a fact. And what's really disturbing is I raised the question about security around Donald Trump. Now, he has his own private security, but these are the elements he needs to put in place wherever he's traveling. He needs a Kevlar shield in front of him, between him and the public. He needs to have the public only on one side. He needs to have members of either his staff or other people that are volunteers use non-lethal weapons like pepper spray, beanbags, and tasers inside the crowd. He needs to have spotters with lethal weapons that have, we call top spotters high up inside whatever crowd, so if somebody does start shooting whatever, they need to have a sniffer machine that can pick up bombs and detect any chemicals that could indicate.
Now, there were no dog sniffers, although the event was just ended a few minutes ago in Evansville, Indiana. He did have the crowd in front of him, not behind him. Right. A lot of secret
I'm repeating these things because I don't want to see this man assassinated.
I agree with you 100%.
I'm extremely concerned because I don't want to see another JFK moment. I remember when I was coming back from school in grade 5, and I heard about the assassination of JFK, and because I'm very sensitive spiritually, I was in a state of spiritual shock for days, weeks, and months. And I never really get over it because I realized when I started researching and finding out that LBJ was a primary point man, and recently we talked about this with Roger Stone, and that he had literally gotten into trouble with the Israelis because they wanted nuclear materials. He was in trouble with the mob. He was in trouble with members of the Pentagon.
And you know who was one of the chief operatives running the assassination?
I do.
At Dealey Plaza, had his little boy along with him as a cover. George H.W. Bush, and the little boy was George Bush Jr.
Right, exactly. And that's part of the reason why the presidency of Ronald Reagan, especially after the assassination attempt, was basically a presidency of George H.W. Bush.
Well, the powers that be went to Ronald Reagan along with the heads of the TV networks when he won the nomination and told him, look, you've got to select the vice presidential candidate. We will ensure your election if you put George Bush on your ticket. If you don't, we'll make sure you fail. He put George Bush on the ticket, and in less than a year, they tried to kill him to get him out of the way. They fired an exploding bullet. It went into him. It did not explode. Had it exploded, he would have been dead.
Now, here's the thing. We talked about I call the Ronald Reagan-like speech, but even more impressive was Donald Trump's speech yesterday, 38-plus minutes on CNN. The peace situation in Europe, in the Middle East, is going to blow up. And you have this in your blog, europebusiness.blogspot. Obama, while at the same time he's saying he wants peace, he's actually shipping man-pads and surface-to-air missiles and advanced rocket
F-22s, B-52 heavy bombers.
Everything.
There's an Army ground-to-ground missile system that's very dangerous. He's shipping into Turkey. We're preparing for a major global war in the Middle East, and we're talking short term. We're not talking about a year from now. We're talking about weeks.
Yeah, Obama wants to have a 9/11 event in American soul and a Mideast war to cover his transition to becoming the prez for life as dictator. Tim, you have something to read, and I want you to read it slowly enough so people can get it, because you read it kind of fast to me on the break. So, people need to realize this is... Who wrote this statement? Because it's very pressing.
Well, this is from Fox News, from their politics page. It's just hot, just up. Bremer, that we're speaking about, the former Republican Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Bremer likes Trump, savages Cruz. The Republican establishment is getting jitty with the idea of nominating Donald Trump. How jitty? Well, former House Speaker John Bremer on Wednesday told a crowd at Stanford University that he was texting buddies with the celebrity businessmen and would have no trouble voting for him in the fall. According to the school's newspaper, Bremer accepted Trump as the presumptive Republican nominee, although he inclined to endorse Trump's specific policies. As for the remaining obstacles to Trump's takeover of the GOP, Bremer sounded rather Trump-like himself. Quote, end quote, Lucifer in the flesh, end quote, the former speaker said of Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas. Quote, I have Democrat friends and Republican friends. I get along with almost everyone, but I have never worked with a more miserable son of a bitch in my life, end quote. The remarks came on, the remarks came on the same day that Cruz tapped Stanford alumni Carly Fiorina as his running mate in a bid to stage a comeback win in Indiana for the chance to thwart Trump at the Republican National Convention in July. The viciousness of Bremer's attacks is the clearest signal yet that the Republican establishment is falling behind Trump in a big way. Now, I want to tell you, first off, I live in Indiana, lived here my whole life, except when I was traveling or, overseas in Scotland, but I'm a Hoosier. And what I saw today, I've seen presidential politics going back to JFK. I've been in New Hampshire 2 or 3 times. I've never seen the lines I saw today. People get lined up in the sun to get in to see any politician. I've never seen people that clearly didn't give a damn whether he was a Republican or a Democrat.
I got a new term for you. He's not a politician. He's an anti-politician. In other words, it's like when you're dealing with antimatter, which will kill you and destroy the universe. He's the antimatter to the anti-politician. So he's the exact opposite. He's a blue-collar billionaire.
And he's plain speaking. I can tell from the way he moves his hands, he's a New Yorker. I'm a Hoosier. But he's plain speaking, and like he spoke, he said, when he went down to Louisiana and he was supposed to lose big time, he's a New York City billionaire, and he goes down to Louisiana, and the poor working class people down there got behind him unbelievably. Why? Well, he may be rich and he may be from New York City, but you know what? He's real. He's not a politician, and it comes through. He cares about the country. He says, why am I doing this? I don't need to do this. But he says, I love this country. This country has given me a lot. And he's real. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen people so excited. I mean, these people are excited. I've seen all kind of people. I've seen them for Kennedys and Humphrey and you name them, Carter and all of them. And I've never seen people so excited. It's a phenomena. It's the Trump phenomenon.
Well, you know what I think it is? There's a lot of Christians in this nation, a lot of Torah Jews, praying to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that America will be rescued. Because, and I want to deviate for just a second here to show this to people. America, I call Ephraimerica. Now I'll explain what that means. God gave a promise to Abraham. That promise was to the 2 houses of Israel. The house of Ephraim and the house of Judah. And the house of Judah include the half tribe of Benjamin because they brought false fire into the temple, so half of them were killed. And the house of Judah. The Levites are not Jews. People need to get this straight. They are Ephraimites. They had lands up in northern Lebanon, which used to be part of Israel. And they had lands around the Shuf Mountains. My family, my mother's side, had a town that they lived in called Beshkent, which is outside Beirut. They were there for thousands of years. They were the family that were direct blood descendants in the 24 family cycle from Moses, called the Naimas. They took the tribal name when they were taken by the Medo-Persians to Esfahan, which is in northwestern Iran, the capital of Media. Media is rising again. Not a good media, a Muslim media, unfortunately. Now, what's going on is that America is both the daughter of Babylon and the daughter of Zion. Zion, we're talking about Zion Nazis like the globalist maniacs. No, we're talking about Zion in terms of being a godly nation to lead other nations to the Most High God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and bless them. That's why the outer court of the temple was for all the other nations of the earth. It wasn't just for Jews or for Christians or for Muslims. It was for us to bless and bring them the knowledge of the Most High, the knowledge of what you call Emmanuel, one who had full God knowledge, the God in the flesh, Yeshua Jesus. Okay? Now, what's happening is we have this little nation of Israel that's in apostasy, that was raised and brought there as a communist, a Sabbatean nation. Barry Thomas just talked about this. He's a Jew. And to bring them back and to weld them together again. Remember, during the last 8 years, Obama has treated Israel with such disrespect. Now, not that they aren't doing some things that are disturbing, but if you were surrounded by Muslim nations willing to kill you and you had to put up a wall to stop them from blowing yourself or your wife up in a bus, you would do something like putting up
Remember,
a wall.
the wall was my idea, and I took it to the then Prime Minister.
I remember that, Tim. So I want to give you credit, and here's the point. God is going to restore the two houses of Israel before the time of the end. He even gave a numerical number. I'm going to save 1/3 of the Jews will turn back and repent and become saved in a saved position, which means they're going to Shema, hear and do God's will. I don't know what percentage it will be for the, quote, the rest of the peoples, but the key is America is the lead of the Ephraimic nations. Remember, all of the nations of Europe were former tribes of Israel, the northern tribes, all of them. The French, the Celts, the Irish, the Germans, the Scots, the Welsh, all those peoples, including the Spaniards, the Portuguese, etc., they are all ancient Ephraimic tribes. And the Druids are just apostate Levitical priests that include Canaanite and other ancient pagan rituals. So most people don't realize that the Druidic priests through the Middle Ages were actually ancient apostate Aaronic priests. Okay? America has a major role, not a minor role in this end times, which is why when you hear the comments by Mr. Putin, okay, remember this, that Trump's foreign policy, it's the first time in history that a Russian leader has given praise to a new candidate for president because he knows that they can have common ground issues like extreme Islam, modernization of the industry, and protecting the Earth from nearer space objects and space weather, which is causing most of the climate change. Yes, there's climate change, but we're not doing it. We're the object or the subject of things causing climate change, and we can apply science to protect our environment. And it's not going to be by putting carbon taxes on and stopping and doing carbon capturing. It's by using logic and science instead of foolishness to use this as a tool to control the population of Earth and put them in a matrix. So Mr. Putin, who has a clue, again, remember, God said, I'm just using a joke here, God created vodka so the Russians wouldn't rule the world. And he created single malt liquor so the Scots wouldn't rule the world. And he created...
actually, the story is he created Irish whiskey so the Irish wouldn't rule the world.
That's true. That's true. It's the same line. But the point is, Putin doesn't drink vodka. And the man is a Christian. He's considered like a St. Paul in Russia. And then they say he doesn't have the God of his fathers. In other words, he's not a communist in the communist term like Stalin and Lenin and all these other maniacs. They're coming out of socialism, realizing it didn't work, it doesn't work. We are all created of equal value, but none of us are created with equal talents. Other people can jump higher, run faster, sing better, but each of us has special godly talents that God gives us, so we can hear and do His will. And as an orchestra, we can be collectively the bride of God, giving Him children, worshiping Him, and realizing He's the King of wisdom, and the only one that we can sin against is God, not man or in the environment. And so when I hear this about Putin, I'm thinking, it gives me great joy to think we can deal with China on terms of making a win-win situation with respect, so we can restrain maniacs like Kim Jong-un, who is a psychotic, obese, out of his mind maniac who wants to target U.S. cities with nuclear weapons. And we have Obama demoting and destroying our nuclear weapons protection system, which was going to take forever to build anyway, properly. And they have multiple layers, a interferometry field and a missile to hit a missile system called THAAD, or theater air defense. This is ridiculous. And they also have these what's called the death ray lasers. The best of those systems are the death ray lasers, but the problem is they only have like 10 of them. You need thousands of these deployed all over the world in order to build a missile.
You need to avoid a situation where you use 21st century weapons of mass destruction to destroy the planet. And that's where we're headed.
But you always have to negotiate from
positions of strength. You need to eliminate people from positions of power who are demonic, psychopathic idiots and nuts who want to blow up the world so they can come out of their cave afterwards and rule over what other is left. Those people need to be locked up for the rest of their lives.
Tim, the problem is not a geopolitical or an intellectual problem like teaching people what's right or wrong. It's a spiritual problem, like the book of Ephesians. The reason why...
Yeah, and as a good Christian, I would lock them up. If I wasn't quite as good a Christian, I'd kill them.
But you and I are not passive. Here's the problem. Passivity and willingness to not do, it says,
where did Jesus say to be passive?
Let me finish. Good men do nothing, evil abounds. This is the problem. People say, well, why, Dr. Deagle, do you put yourself in danger? You could just be retired. I said, because, like Jeremiah, the truth burns in my bosom. I have to say it, even though it puts me in danger. And what are you going to say at the time after your death when you're meeting the Most High God and he's saying, what did you do? I tell people getting to heaven is a group ticket. It's not an individual ticket. You only get there if you take other people with you. Isn't it interesting, eh? And I tell people also, heaven starts today and hell becomes evident when the body drops away. Now, when we're talking to Putin, and they're, by the way, a Christian nation looking at us and say, you people aren't Christian anymore. That's obscene. When we have Obama saying we're not a Christian nation and he's trying to demote Christianity and advance Islam, which is very dangerous. We talked about this with Bill Warner, who will be back on the program here early next week. He's on Wednesday next week on the 4th. What we need to understand is, intellectually and logically, these things really don't give any wiggle room. So if I had callers who were saying they disagree with Bill Warner, I'm going to savage them. People say, I did the show yesterday with John B. Wells, and I had him on last fall, and I said, John, what distinguishes you? He's got a very deep voice, and he's very slow and much more methodical than I am. I talk too fast, get technical. He said, what is it? And he said, I don't ambush my guests. I said, that's all I do. I ambush myself. And the reason is, I pursue the truth like a wild animal pursuing prey. I don't give quarter. And I think it's important that if people grasp that, the true leaders, like, for example, Trump, people like myself that's a leader, because I am. And you out there, you're leaders too, if you decide to say, I'm going to give, say this prayer, I'm going to give my fear to the Most High God, and I'm going to ask him to replace us with the oil of joy and the willingness and bravery to tell the truth, do the right thing, in no matter what circumstance, even if it suffers my job, my relationships, and my family. I'm going to put God first. Then he will bless you. He'll bless our nation. And that's why I say how important it is that we repent. Public repentance is what's going to put a shield of special protection over Trump and our nation. Otherwise, we're going to go down hard. We are.
Yeah, I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a national sales manager for a firm. And, I said to him, look, I think Trump is the last hope for our country. And he said, I agree.
Yeah, that's it. This is the end of the game. It's the end of the game. This is it. We are now in a Shemitah year, or Wipeout or Jubilee year, the 120th Shemitah year since the birth of Adam. To the year. And listen, we had 2,000 years of grace since Yeshua HaMashiach, the Father, came in the flesh. And now, we are in the birth pangs. Technically, we started last September at the Tetrad Blood Moons, when 72 nations and the POTUS and Pontifex met and agreed with Agenda 2030. And if you think, it can't be that bad, read it. Read it. Damn it. I get so angry when people say, well, I think that's just your opinion, Dr. Deagle. How about you take off the blinders, you read the damn document, you realize this is gross. This is so damned evil, it's hard to contain I can't even call it anger, because anger is not a good enough word for it. It's rage. It's like, oh my gosh. And when people try to pretend that it's open to their opinion, this isn't open to opinion.
Look, what I tell people is step back from the lying mainstream news media, step back from the positions you're supposed to believe in, and look at some of the stuff that's happening. Look at Roundup, that wonderful company, Monsanto, based in St. Louis. Look at what Roundup alone. I read recently that it may be responsible for more dead people than World War I and World War II combined. Could well be. It's in our food system. It's in everything. And look, that's one tiny aspect. That's one tiny population reduction program running. You have some of the most evil, sick, sociopathic SOBs on this earth sitting on top, and they want to wipe out most of us. They want to wipe out most of us.
What we have to understand is it's not a lot different than when Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee to the Gadarenes to cast out the demons into the pigs. We have pigs in Washington, D.C., where a lot of demons are in them. We're seeing what we call human flesh avatared by evil. This is not just human logic or human greed. This transcends that. This is a level of evil that defies common sense, logic, or even decency. There's no basis whatsoever to justify with logic or anything the fact of destruction of America. Even the rich and powerful say, do you want to spend the next century underground in a hotel, you and your descendants, do you?
If you don't believe that they intend to destroy America, then ask yourself, look at this whole issue of NAFTA, this whole issue of all these American factories. Just within a 10-year period, they shipped 50,000 large American factories overseas. Now, all these firms got tax credits for doing that. Why, in God's name, would you set up a system to ship our industrial manufacturing capacity, the one thing that has really helped America to be prosperous, to China, to Mexico, to Indonesia, to Bangladesh, and some other third world so-and-sos? Why would you do that if you didn't intend to destroy this great country?
Yeah, but the reason why we won the Second World War is because we produced the material to make the war possible.
We can't do it anymore.
We couldn't do it anymore. If we had a multi-front war, we could not prosecute it with Obama.
And of all these characters that have been running for presidency this election cycle, there's only one that has talked about putting tariffs on and bringing the manufacturing jobs back and putting people
I'm going to recommend a sign for the next rally: God's Trump card. By the way, just a little quick instructions. If you're going to NutriMedical, you want to listen to the program. The Listen Live banner, which is just to the right of you'll see a rotating picture banner. It says Listen Live on NutriMedical.com. You have the top button is to showcast. Second one down is our archives. We have it back going now into March, soon to January, and then all the way back eventually in the next few weeks to February 2009. We have the podcast, and of course, if you go down further, you can see the Deagle Network, which gives you podcast, live stream, YouTube, articles, ebooks, everything there. It's amazing. Next is the NutriMedical Show MP3 archives over at GCN, which will soon be taken off because it'll all be transferred over to our Blueberry, which has all the searchable elements, etc. in it. And, of course, we have the on-call numbers. And if you want to listen to the program, call 605-562-5111. That's the Zeno radio number to call to listen to the program. Then down below we have NutriMedical formulas and protocols. That's our live stream channel. I'll be adding other channels there or events. So there'll be a button for those events. And then my YouTube channel, which includes also transfer from the Deagle Network, TV video, all the other topics. So what you need to know is we have functionality. You want to go to NutriMedical.com for all the central issues to listen to order, and to ask questions. Go to the Contact Us or call the order line 888-212-8871 for a consultation. Again, all the consults are free, FRE, it's our ministry, except if you try to dump a ton of medical records on me or medical legal records, I will charge for my time. Other than that, that's one case in 1,000. This is our ministry. We provide free advice to try to help you get well. So, Tim, let's summarize what's going on. This is a historic moment in time, isn't it?
By saying something that Donald Trump said just a few minutes ago here in Evansville, Indiana, and that was, he said, I have now received more votes than any Republican, and this is the primary season, it's not over yet, more votes than any Republican candidate for president has ever received. And he said when you consider it includes people like General Dwight Eisenhower and all the people who they got elected and didn't get elected that ran for president as Republican, he's now gotten more votes than any of them.
Wow.
And when you see, I heard about, this phenomena of all these people standing in line and just the excitement. When you see it in person, it takes your breath away.
I heard that Chris is available. I decided he wasn't here. Chris,
wow.
Do you have a quick statement on what's going on with Fukushima or the nuclear plants, Chris?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. I can. Yeah, we have a couple minutes left here.
Oh, okay, good. No, just really, the only thing I really wanted to discuss was probably the recent seismic activity near the Sendai power plant. I know we're talking about Fukushima for close to
Sendai is in Central Island, isn't it? Sendai.
It's a southern. It's a southern part,
right?
And it was near the volcano that was that might have that might have acted up during the recent large earthquakes and all. I just wanted to bring that up that power plants around the world, as well as all other structures, not really out of the woods.
Yeah,
that's really
I think what is it? 55% of reactors worldwide are within strike distance of a major fault zone. Is that a pretty good number?
That's correct. It's just the amount of preparedness that's needed.
You know what I'd like to do after the show, Chris? I'd like to do a quick live stream video with you, and then separately with Tim, going over your blog, Tim. I'll give you a call in a few minutes, Chris, and we'll do a quick video on that and these issues. And we'll call you also, Tim, and put a live stream video up, and these will all be available at the Deagle Network, -network.com. Go to the buttons, and you'll be able to watch it free. And if you sign up, we'll give you a notice as soon as new podcasts or videos are posted. It's all free.